Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and in this video I'm going to share some information with you on a beautiful plant called Plantain or Plantago. Now there's a couple different species that you might be familiar with. The one that I am most familiar with is Plantago major, and then there's also one that is very common and people are familiar with it because it grows everywhere, as well is Plantago lanceolata. And they have very similar properties, and sometimes the leaves and the striations in the leaves can look the same, but Plantago major is also known as broadleaf, and Plantago lanceolata is a narrow leaf, long narrow leaves. Now what makes them interesting is there's multiple spines in each of the leaves, whether it's narrow or broadleaf, and it can be very easy to identify once you know how to identify it. So here is a great picture of one. And of course, there'll be some other pictures accompanying this video, but you've probably seen this around. And what's nice about this plant is that it grows everywhere. In fact, one of the common names, white man's footprint, because as European settlers were coming across the United States, their wagons and where they would disturb the soil, this plant was found growing along the trails of where the settlers came across the United States. And that's what the Native Americans gave it as a common name, was white man's footprint. Also, it's known as broadleaf Plantago, at least the Plantago major. Now that is the one I am most familiar with, the one I'm used to using, the one that I grew up identifying. But there's a lot of things that you can do and a lot of medicinal properties that plantain has. Now this is different than the plantain that's in the fruit family, looks like a banana. So this is very, very different. You want to look at Plantago major. So that's the one I'm going to mostly be talking about today. Now it has a ton of health benefits, and let's just start with the kind of the top of the head. So it's really, really amazing for ears and sinuses. So ear infections, you can actually take the juice, a little bit of juice of a plantain leaf, kind of drip it right in the ear, and it does amazing things for ear infections. It can draw out infections. Now, before I get too much further, the information I share with you is not meant to be medical advice. This is my own opinion, and it's meant to educate and entertain you only. So please do your own due diligence when it comes to not only using plants and plant medicine, but identifying them and using them out in the wild. And especially with plants like plantain, because this grows all over North America. It grows in Asia and Europe and pretty much anywhere where human beings are, because it is just this unassuming little plant. And a lot of times you might see it, and unless you know how to identify it, it's just kind of there. Now, there are some varieties, like a Turkish variety of plantain or Plantago, that is bigger. It's got these great big leaves, great big stalks. In fact, some species of plantain, the stalks are where the psyllium is. So psyllium husk comes from the plantain plant, which is amazing to know. So it's great for ear infections. It's great for sinus infections. One of the things I love most about it is it's really good for lung or respiratory infections. And one of the things that's beautiful about it is it adapts to what your body needs. So if you have a mucousy, wet cough, it will help dry that up. If you have a really dry cough, it will actually help bring moisture into your lungs. In fact, we put Plantago major, into our lung blend. So it's one of the herbs that are in it. So we've got the Osha root, Lobelia, Mullein, Peppermint, and Plantain, because it's just such a beautiful, beautiful herb for lung health. It's also really, really good for digestion. And one of the things I love about plantain is that it's good for skin wounds, and it draws out infection. And it also is really good for drying out the sting of a bee, the bite of a mosquito, a spider bite. It can draw out venoms. And it's really great for emergency use if you're out on a hike. I've done this several times because I am such a hiker. I've been stung before. My worst one was I was stung by a yellow jacket. It got down my shirt when I was hiking. I felt it go in, and before I could get it out, it stung me right on the back. And what I did is I made what's called a spit poultice, which sounds kind of disgusting, but you take, if you know how to identify a plantain, Plantago major, then you can take a leaf, chew it up, and then put it on the wound, and then put another leaf over it, or even wrap it around if you can. Now the Plantago lanceolata has the long, narrow leaves. They both have multiple spines up the back of the leaf, which makes it partly easy to identify. So this is one of those plants that I would say grow in your medicinal herb garden. It grows all over the United States, and it grows in Asia, it grows in Europe. It's one of those plants that is powerful to have in and easy to grow and easy to access. Now, one of the things I also love to do with it is to put it into a skin salve. So what you would do in this case is you would harvest the leaves, you would dry them. You can either dry them on, in a sunny place, or just on a rack or a towel, or you could even put them in a dehydrator on a low temperature. And then take them and kind of crush them up and put them in a glass jar, like a quart jar. Fill it with something like extra virgin olive oil or coconut oil. And I like to use fractionated coconut oil when I'm infusing an oil, if my first preference is not available, which is usually organic, extra light virgin olive oil is what I like to use when I'm infusing my plants into an oil. So basically what you would do is put the dried plant, you want to make sure all the moisture's out, because you don't want it to have a chance to go rancid, but you fill it with olive oil after you put the dried plants, and fill it with the dried plants. Now make sure you leave a little bit of room in the top of your jar so that the leaves can have room to expand a little bit in the olive oil or the coconut oil or avocado oil, whatever carrier oil that you love to use, you can do that. Then I always let my herbs infuse into an oil for about 30 days. You can usually do 2 to 3 weeks. 30 days seems to be a sweet spot for me. And what I love to do is set it in a sunny window where the heat from the sun and the light from the sun helps to just infuse the herb into the oil. And then I'll strain it through a cheesecloth or a piece of muslin cloth. And then I will actually take that and put it into I have the perfect recipe with beeswax and a little bit of shea butter. The beeswax gives it the consistency of a salve, but you take and you melt in a double boiler. You melt down the beeswax and the shea butter and the herb infused oil, and then you pour it into either jars or tins, and you've got the perfect salve for skin wounds and skin healing. And just one of the things that I love is it's a drying salve, like I said earlier. You can also use the leaves, the fresh young leaves, into your salads, and you can juice them. You can put them into a tincture like we do with our lung blend. You can actually put them into a single tincture, use it for lungs, sinuses, ears, digestion. I would suggest either making a salve or a tincture, using it as a tea, or all of the above. So do some more of your own due diligence on this beautiful, beautiful plant, Plantain or Plantago major. This is one of the fun plants to have in your herb garden to learn about and then to start utilizing. So I'd love to know what you think about this. How familiar are you with plantain? It's one of those plants that I believe is an absolute must in your medicinal herb garden. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.